Hello, and welcome to another bonus live stream from Save Your Sanity podcast. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. I'm so excited to be talking with Pernilla Lillarose again. She was my guest on Emotional Savvy podcast. You can go and hear her episode. Just go to emotionalsavvy.com and look up her name. And you can see it right there on the screen, so you know how to spell it. But you can find her episode of that. And I'm just delighted to welcome you to the program, Pernilla.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful to be here again, Roberta.
Yeah, it's a good time for us to be talking about self-care and self-love and things because we can be feeling a lot of anxiety and stress right
Mhm.
now in these difficult times. And the uncertainty of not knowing what's going to happen, when it's going to end, if it's going to end, what our changes will be,
Yeah,
which changes will be permanent, so many things going on.
yeah, yeah.
And that can definitely lead us to anxiety. So let's talk about self-care because sometimes we just think that's drinking enough water and having a hot bath. But there are so many kinds of self-care. What do you say about that?
Yeah, there are many different ways to exercise self-care, and I think they're all valid depending on where you're at. Um, I think the best self-care to learn is to really start listening to your own needs and to listen to what feels natural and true to you. Because, especially as women, we have been so conditioned to ignore that, to suppress it to the point that we actually don't even know what we want. So, here, while we are in this shelter in place and spend probably a lot more time inside and not so busy, not distracted by all the normal day to day things, I would say start getting curious about what you really want, what matters to you. And even though it may be a whole new language, you will start learning from your own inner. It's kind of a language of feeling and sensing and feeling a yes and feeling a contraction of no. It's like that expansion, contraction, and that's a lot that I that I work with my clients and in my work to really help them learn the movement of yes and the movement of no, and then start taking those steps whenever it feels safe and right to practice it. So that would be a first step. And then as you move along, taking a bath, drinking enough water, eating good food, of course, that's all part of it. But really learning to find out what is really good for me, what is really right for me, that takes like a turning inside and being curious and open and gentle. Really
Mm.
being gentle about what you may find that matters to you, and meet that with a sense of care and curiosity and love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you're also speaking to is the individuality of what self-care is. For one person, one thing may be sustaining. For another person, it's almost meaningless.
Exactly.
And so being able to calibrate that, I like what you're saying about learning the expansion of yes and the contraction of
Yeah.
no, and really understanding what your energetic fields are doing
Yeah.
and how that's speaking to you, because we kind of let that go dull sometimes.
Yeah.
We haven't honored that in any way. We don't listen to our intuition or go with our gut, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And it takes encouragement, as you were offering encouragement to say, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, as you say.
Yeah.
That's you, and that's important. And I think there's another piece of self-care that is actually being self-reflective enough to know what your values are, what your vision for your life is, what your
Yeah.
beliefs are, and what your purposes are in life, so that you can be in alignment. That's a form of self-care too, isn't it?
In a way, I find that probably the biggest part of the self-care is almost like the soul care. I mean, that's when you really go to the core of the movement of who we are, what resonates with us. And it comes from a deep listening. And it may take some time to listen to the other layers first, like, right? I know that some of my clients, when they start learning that, they're actually surprised how often they say yes when they mean no. So sometimes I give them just the homework to just notice, how often do you just say yes as a default without pausing and taking a breath first and just check in. And you may still say yes because that's what we have been conditioned. That's what your family may expect from you. So take some time to just get really curious before you say yes and just feel what do I feel in my body? And you might feel like a contraction every time you say yes because you really want to say no. And that is kind of the tipping point of starting to listen to that inner movement of what is your truth. And it's very simple, right? The basics of yes and no, and what the feeling and the energy and the sensation and expression is with that.
Yeah, I like what you said because we have to get quiet and get in touch with ourselves.
Yeah.
We can just blurt out an answer because we think it'll make somebody happy
Yeah.
or they'll like us better or we're living up to their expectations, but that's really not why we're here. We're not really here to live up to the expectations of others.
Yeah.
When Charles Anderson and I wrote the book Soul Solitude, Taking Time for Our Souls to Catch Up,
Oh,
we talked about one of the big predicaments in life, which is living up to the expectations of others as an adult.
yeah.
And living up to the expectations of others is a childhood thing. You've got the
Yeah.
parental thing.
Yeah.
But when you actually expand and become your own person as an adult, you should be living up to your own expectations and your own vision and values
Yeah.
and not those of other people. Now, if they happen to coincide, that's great. If
Yeah.
you're having a great relationship and maybe you make some compromises or shifts that go in the direction of your partner for a while and then they come back to you,
Yeah.
those are all agreements that you make. But still, as an adult, you have the opportunity of living your life from what's most important to you. And that is self-care.
Yeah.
That truly is. Do you think in any way, Pernilla, that it's selfish to engage in self-care? Because I've heard people say that to me. Oh, well, I don't have time for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can say a few things about it because about a year ago, I did a little market research with maybe 30 women just to find out about, what is it that stops them from just living their own life or following their own truth, because I was curious. And it was so astounding that it was almost like across the board that they were afraid it was selfish to do that. So I wrote this little ebook called Five Mistakes Women Make That Stops Them from Getting Their Needs Met. I think that's the title, because it was just so like, my goodness, this is crazy. This is crazy. How can it possibly be selfish to honor your own truth, which comes from your divine soul, as your divine spark and expression in this life? How can that be selfish? Now, I wrote an article years ago that where I was playing around with the S, is it a small s selfish or is it a capital S selfish?
Yeah.
Now, I would say selfish with a capital S. If you ask me, is it selfish with a capital S? 100%. And it's a good thing.
Well, I've done an audio program called Be Positively Selfish.
Yeah.
And I think I did that, I think in 2002, but it's still as applicable today as it ever was
Yeah.
because there's a way to be positively selfish
Yeah.
that is self-care and that works for you and allows you to be the unique human you are as opposed to being part of the herd. And that spark that is uniquely you is waiting for expression. But if you're constantly dulling it in favor of somebody else's values or someone else's vision of what should be happening
Yeah.
today, won't work for you. But I don't believe it's selfish at all to engage in self-care.
No, and it's almost the opposite, because if you think it's selfish to not include yourself and to only think of others before yourself, many times the reason is that we're afraid if we don't do it, we won't be loved, we won't be included, we'll be rejected. So that is, if anything is selfish, you can flip it around and look at from that point too. Why are we doing it? Well, I'm afraid that I won't be loved. Now, is that capital S or is that small s? So if you look at the movement, or the movement behind ignoring yourself because you want to please others, I would just be curious, like what is the motivation? What is the deeper truth behind that? And then you
Mm-hmm.
can say, oh, well, maybe it's not so selfish to include myself. Because also, when you do include yourself and you take good care of yourself, you get enough rest, you get enough water, you eat healthy, you take time for yourself, you say no when it's not right for you to engage with people, you start feeling so much better, right? It's like you fill yourself up with the love for yourself, so you're full, right? Now then you walk out into the world full, and then you have plenty to give. So in a way, being selfish is actually a positive movement in the world when you come from a fullness inside, right?
I think so. And
Yeah.
I think also that we always have to remember that we can't give a gift we don't have. I may really want to give you something, but if I don't have it to give it to you,
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
And so when we take care of ourselves, then I can give attention to you because I'm taken care of.
Yeah.
I have something to give. But if I'm running on empty and I give to you and I give to you and I give to you,
Yeah.
I will begin to go into resentment. And what often happens when someone goes into resentment in that case, then they start beating themselves up because I must be a bad person because I'm resenting giving everything I don't have away. And it's a sad
Yeah.
truth, but it's too
Yeah.
common.
Yeah. It is. It is. Yeah. And you spoke it so well, Roberta. It's such a pattern, and when we can recognize that, right, when you speak it so clearly, then a lot of people will go, say, oh yeah, that's actually true, that makes sense, and then you can change and choose another way.
Well, that's always our opportunity.
Yeah.
We're not giving up something when we learn something and say, "Oh, I think I'll do things differently." You know, just because you've always done something doesn't mean it was the right thing and isn't maybe the right thing for now. It may have served you at some point to do it that way, but now you're different and
Yeah.
it doesn't serve you and it doesn't serve the world to have you living from that old pattern. And sometimes self care is giving yourself permission to change your mind.
Yeah.
It's a
And
big deal.
yeah, and I think when you feel the support, like from you, from your show, from your friends, from other women who are living it, I think it's really important that we have some role models that give us the permission as long as we need it. I think that's essential, because we have lived in a society where we have been conditioned to ignore ourselves and to believe that it's selfish. So those are deep patterns. And then having your show here where, you know, there's this opportunity to see that there is another way and it is happening, and anyone can join that movement inside and follow your deeper truth. You are not alone anymore. I think that's what I want to say about it. When I started doing it, I felt like very alone in it, but now it's becoming more and more the norm, the new norm, right?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think the twig is bent too far in some people,
Yeah.
Pernilla.
Yeah.
I think that we have entitlement issues that go on that, I deserve all of the time. I deserve to have it my way. I deserve. I
Yeah.
was struck by the teenagers in spring break in Florida with the outbreak of the pandemic. And they were being interviewed and they were saying, well, I've looked forward to spring break ever since I started high school. Nobody's going to take that away from me. Nobody has the right, you
Mm,
know.
yeah,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
well, that is entitlement.
yeah, yeah,
That is entitlement. That is not self-care.
no,
That is not living from your values. That's
yeah,
saying I am more important than every other human being
yeah,
on the planet.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's almost like a rebellion behind it, right? And that's not really love. It's like they're fighting against something that has not been resolved inside. And then it can show up that way. But when you really listen and honor, then everything's included, right? You will include the people who will maybe not benefit from you being at the beach, you know. So there is a deeper listening. But yeah, that's a process.
Yeah, I think it's very important for us to live within that balance of what is self-compassion, what is self-care, and we're going to get on to self-love in a moment. And how do I balance that with the people with whom I live, the society within which I live, and where I'd like to place myself demonstrating my values in the world. You know, those are all important things. So I think self-care is even more important during these times of stress and anxiety
Yeah, yeah,
because this could be tapping into deep things that have happened to you earlier in your life. The cellular memory of times when you had no choice, when you had to do something but you wanted to do something else, when you
yeah,
felt sad or when you felt abandoned or when you felt alone. All of these things can be upping your level of anxiety right now
yeah,
because there are wise choices that we make that other people might call limitations or restrictions, but we're making it. You know, I loved one of the graphics I saw on Facebook the other day that said, we're staying home now so that when we get together again, no one is missing.
oh, yeah,
Right? That was such a generous and beautiful way of expressing it, I
yeah,
thought.
yeah,
You know,
mm,
that's why we're doing it. I don't know what my effect would be on other humans if I went out, and I don't know, you know. Important to realize that I don't want to have a negative effect on other humans. I
mhm,
just don't want to do that. So
yeah,
let's move on and talk about self-love because sometimes I hear that word and I my eyes want to roll because it's been bandied around so much
yeah,
that now again it has shades of entitlement in it and it
um,
gets out of balance. So what's your take on self-love?
you know, it's funny. I had not heard that it had actually tipped to the other side, like you've been talking about. So that's kind of a new for me. But when I started realizing the whole thing about self love, how that was the lack of self love was the reason I got in a very, very bad situation many years ago. And I think I shared some of that on the last time I was on your show. Um, so it was kind of new, and I wrote this book called Imagine Being Kind to Yourself because I really realized that it was essential, and I would never have gotten in that situation if I had listened to myself and cared enough
Mm-hmm.
about myself to honor the no. There was this big no that I ignored. And so now it seems to me that more and more people realize the gift of self-love. And I can't you cannot separate self-love and self-care in a way, because when you love yourself, you naturally take care of yourself. You naturally
Right.
want to be loving to your body and give it good food and good rest, and naturally not hang out with toxic people. So the self-love, in my experience after many years of practicing first, it's just become, I don't know what to say about it. It's just natural. There's no thinking about it anymore. So the practice of learning to love yourself by honoring yourself, by listening to yourself, by really be willing to say no when something is not right for you. It always comes back to that no, right? This sacred no. It is so important to honor that and not make yourself wrong for not wanting to do something for somebody. You can say it in a loving way. You can
Mhm.
say something like, I really want to help you, but right now it's really important that I do this here, or I'm busy with this right now. And I will be happy to help you. Would you be available maybe tomorrow at 2? Then I can come over and help you. Or something like that, where you include yourself. And then when you do that for a long time, self-love almost becomes obliterated, because it's self-love is needed as long as you practice not self-love. It's almost like the remedy to eliminate the way you have not been loving yourself. And when you become adept at that, and it becomes your second nature, you don't really need it as a thing, as a practice. It's just how you live your life, just like how you lived your life not loving yourself. So the self-love is kind of a funny term in a way, and you say it's almost bent over a little too far now. But if you live in a space of rebellion and, needing to stand up for your rights, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think we all need to practice that, right? Setting clear boundaries. And sometimes we may get a little bit too harsh in that, because they have not been violated too long. So I think that's also, can we love ourselves enough to take the time to practice it and not be perfect at it yet?
Yeah.
And maybe, can we love ourselves enough if we are never perfect at it, but we are willing to do our best? So I think that thing about, doing our best to honor ourselves, to listen to our deeper truth, to follow it, and that it's okay that you make mistakes and sometimes do it completely the way you didn't want to do it. And you can just say, oops,
Yeah.
maybe apologize to somebody. But it becomes okay to just be yourself when you make that a practice for a while. And life is so much easier, and there's so much more love to share. Wouldn't you say, Rhoberta?
Yeah.
It's just, you just become yourself, and it's not so complicated when you
Yeah.
keep denying yourself, right?
It's true. It really is true. You've got to have balance in all things, moderation in all things, and giving and receiving are the same.
Yeah.
You need to have some balance in that. And one of the people who's joined us asked this question. I'm running on empty now, feeling super depressed, COVID, stressful job, leaving a narcissist, helping a sick mom once a week who I don't have a good relationship
Oh,
with,
yeah.
taking care of family and more stress. Where do I begin to turn things around? What would be your answer, Pernilla?
Wow, that's a lot. First, I want to say, my heart really goes out to you. Um, that's not an easy situation, because it doesn't sound like there is a lot of space for you right now. So, is there any way you can carve out a little space and make that a self-care thing, One thing that I think is more valuable than anything, and that may relate to your book, Rhoberta, about, being, I can't remember the title of it, but going, start to meditate. Even
Mhm.
if it's just 5 minutes here and there, to just take a few minutes and just breathe. Just breathe down into your belly. And you might even just say something nice to yourself, something like, I'm doing amazing given the situation, or something that is nurturing for you on an emotional level. Is there a way you can, eat healthy, do things that are really good for you? I don't know if you're somebody who likes to take a bath. Do that. I'm not. That doesn't mean much to me, but it may be to you. But just start in the small things where you can fit it in, because if you start thinking, oh, I need to do all this, you're not going to do it. So there's the small steps, right? What can you do right now? Can you just take 5 minutes and breathe? Maybe imagine you're breathing love or light into your body. That would be a nice start, but it's a challenging situation you're in. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example in my own life, and I know you probably can't do this, but it gets a message to you. You know, I was taking care of my mother when she was dying. Nasty lady, honestly. Very, very toxic. But I'm an only child, and
Mhm.
who I am is a person who would go and do that, right? I didn't expect anything to be different, but I went to look after her, and it was a long time. So I realized I needed to take care of myself. So this is where the story gets maybe applicable to you, um, who has the question, because I realized that I was depleted. I
Mhm.
was running on empty. So I went for 3 days away, and I went to a cabin, and there was a little hot tub there, and it was way out in the country. I just took care of myself. I ate, I slept, I meditated, I listened to music, I walked in nature, and I had a hot tub.
Mhm.
But when I was preparing to do that, there was an attitude. The hospice workers who came to be with my mother sometimes, when I told them I was going away for 3 days, they said, "Oh, how dare you do that? Don't you realize that your mother is dying?" I said, "Well, honestly, she's not dying today, or she's not dying in the next week. But I will not be able to be fully present to her if I don't take care of myself." And they were horrified. They did everything, all of that stuff that
Mhm.
this little group of older women did.
Yeah.
But I went for the 3 days, and I came back, and I was fully present with my mom for the last 12 days of her life.
Mhm.
And what I'm hearing in your question is, how do I give myself permission to say, I can have those 5 minutes that Pernilla just suggested, that I can realize that I am worth sitting down in nature and just saying, all of those issues will still be there 20 minutes from now. But I will bring a better me to those issues if I take this 20 minutes. And that can sometimes be very helpful when you are considering these issues. And so it's important for us to realize, we're just thanked for our answers here. That's what I was looking at. But it's important for us to realize that sometimes in those breaks, as Pernilla has been saying, in those moments when you say, here's what I need, and I'm going to say yes to that, is the moment that you get what you need in order to have something to give. But if you don't give yourself those moments, you have nothing. And when you run on empty, it's like having no money in your bank account. Then you take out a credit card and you charge, and then the bill comes, and then you still can't pay it. And then you get another bill, and there's interest on that, and you get another bill, and there's interest on the interest. And that's the way your life will go. But if you just say, I'm in a cash negative situation, I'm going to go and fill my own little personal energetic bank account here. I'll come back and I'll be okay. So I hope that that would be helpful to you. And I think your question is very well placed, and thank you for asking the question. So I think it's important too for us to know that it's quite all right to feel empowered, and that we want to be moving toward that. It's not power over anyone. It's feeling empowered to say, I have equal value, my needs have equal value to the needs and value of other humans or other situations. And I give myself that power to say yes or to say no, to
Mhm.
go or not to go. Like, I'm always laughing because I'm always on air, and people say, well, you have a very busy life. I say, yeah, I do, but I live from the principle of JOMO. Like, many people are living from the principle of FOMO, the fear of missing out. But I live from the principle of JOMO, which is the joy of missing out. Like, when I figure out I've had this invitation Do I really need to go? No, I don't. Okay, I get to stay home. You know, that's important to me, right?
I can so relate to that. I hadn't heard Jomo before, but yes, I love it.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. And, I wanted to bring up this question of self-doubt. And why I wanted to bring it up is if you've had a hijackal parent or you've been in a relationship with a person who's toxic, the hijackal difficult people that I talk about, and for those of you who are just joining me, hijackals is a term that I trademarked, so we could talk about the patterns, traits, and cycles of these relentlessly difficult toxic people. But if you were raised by them, you may have crushing self-doubt because that's what they put on you. And so when you even ask yourself the question, do I deserve X or Y? Your self-doubt can just overtake that, and you will I'm not sure, I'm not sure. And when you're in that, I'm not sure, you're in a state of paralysis. You don't know whether to go or not to go, to move or not to move. And that's where a hijackal always wants you to be so that they can tell you what to do. And so when you're little and you're raised by all of that, that can be very, very difficult. So if you find that you have a lot of self-doubt, please feel free to reach out and talk to me because I will help you if you have been in a toxic relationship or are in one, whether that was a parent or a partner, a sibling, an ex, whatever it is. And know too that you can come over to my website, which is forrelationshiphelp.com, and you can join my circles over there. They're completely off social media. So you can be in the discussion forums and all. There are 2 levels. And if you join at the 2nd level, then you can also join in on my Saturday support live calls on Zoom so we can see each other and answer questions. But these are important things for us to know that if you have this crushing self-doubt, there are reasons for that. And, if you want to get in touch with Pernilla, you want to go to divinefeminineflow.com and learn all that's there for you because, just as it says right on her homepage, she's going to help you embody a life of ease and grace. Doesn't that just make you want to relax right here and now? To embody a life of ease and grace, we want to find that. So I want to thank you so much for being with me, Pernilla.
I want to thank you. You know what you just shared about the self-doubt and the way you answered that question, it really touched me. I just so appreciate you, Rhoberta, your wisdom and your love and your care. Very beautiful. Very, very lucky to be here, and all the listeners are all very lucky to be part of your podcast too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you heard all the delight, and if you want to embody a life of ease and joy, then you want to go over to divinefeminineflow.com. Just to recap, if you want to get in touch with me, go to For Relationship Help. And if you know for sure you want to talk to me right away, you can go to beaclient.com. So all those things are there for you, and we'll be back with other Facebook Lives. The Save Your Sanity podcast, just go to saveyoursanitypodcast.com and you will find over 100 episodes there for you. So thank you so much for being with me again, Pernilla, and thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you feel empowered to walk in self-love and demonstrate self-care. Take good care of yourself because you matter. Bye-bye.